All right, y'all, welcome to the show. We got a lot to talk about today, so in just a second, Trump has already humiliated Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan, of course, endorsed him, and Trump will go on to pursue an agenda which is the opposite of the agenda that Rogan pretended he had for so long. So we'll talk about that. We also have Fox News is now salivating over the idea of mass deportations, and Stephen Miller was picked for a very prominent position inside the Trump administration. He was the architect of the Muslim ban, and now he's going to be the architect of mass deportation. Really, really ugly stuff, man. Then we'll get to a MAGA civil war, which has erupted over leadership positions. Trump has declared war on trans Americans. I'll show you his video on that. And then we'll get to Stephen A. Smith is flirting with the presidential run in 2028, which I find very interesting. And Bernie Sanders, this video is wild, man, because he basically perfectly predicted the rise of Trump all the way back in 2003. So talk about finger on the pulse and reading the room well. There's a lot to say about that. So without any further ado, we'll jump into it. You guys know the drill. Everybody, please do me a big favor and subscribe to the channel. Click that bell icon so you get a notification every single time a video drops. And a massive thank you to everybody who supports this show on Patreon or tips on YouTube, because we are actual independent media, not fake new media. A lot of so-called new media is new corporate media, and we are independent media because we take money through small dollar donations from you guys and just the default ads on YouTube. I've never had a conversation with any advertiser. I'm very proud of that fact. All right, let's go ahead and dive into it. So look at what Trump is up to now. Trump plans to withdraw the U.S. from Paris Climate Pact, open some national monuments to drilling. President-elect Donald Trump's transition team has prepared executive orders and proclamations that would withdraw the U.S. from the Paris Climate Agreement and open up Western lands for drilling and mining, according to a report. Trump's energy and environmental transition team, tasked with drafting these actions, includes his former Department of the Interior Secretary David Bernhardt and former Environmental Protection Agency Administrator Andrew Wheeler, the New York Times reported on Friday. Now, by the way, just so everybody understands, one of the tricks that Republicans often do is when they pick somebody to work at the EPA, they usually are a coal lobbyist or an oil and gas lobbyist, or they have an understanding of the bureaucracy and the regulatory state because they're used to evading the regulators. They're used to being on the opposite side of that equation. So their job when they get in there is to basically handcuff these agencies to make it so they don't do their job and regulate big business and try to prevent pollution, etc. So, classic. We knew he was going to do this. A lot of the people who voted for Trump didn't know, but we knew this was going to happen. Trump pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Accord early in his first term, arguing that it was ineffective because it allows countries to voluntarily restrain their own pollution and seeks to hold the U.S. and other industrialized countries to a higher standard. All you need to know is that this line of argument is bullshit. The reason why we needed to curb back more on carbon emissions is because we do more carbon emissions. Right? Pretty simple. Yeah, the Paris Climate Agreement means we have to roll back a lot more because we're already doing more emissions. This isn't like a hard puzzle to put together here. And then they say, during his campaign, the president-elect routinely pledged to once again withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement immediately upon taking office. Trump's transition team has also readied proclamations that would redraw the boundaries of the Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante national monuments in southern Utah. The president-elect reduced the amount of land under management by the federal government at Bears Ears by 85%, and at the other one by 47% during his first term, following an expansion under the Biden administration. So in other words, he's making the national park smaller and smaller and opening it up to commercial interests and letting corporations have a field day with them. So there you go, man. Paris Climate Agreement, pulling out of that. To anybody who would make the argument that Democrats and Republicans are exactly alike, you need to understand that's complete and utter horseshit. Are they too similar? Yes, I think that's fair to say. But are they exactly alike? No, because, for example, with Democratic administrations, they believe in climate change and they want to do something to fight back against it. The Inflation Reduction Act, the Paris Climate Agreement, etc. Whereas with Republicans, they don't believe in it. Trump famously said it's a Chinese hoax. And then now he's pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement again, and he's destroying our national parks. That's great. So, Joe Rogan endorsed Trump after he came on his podcast. And, Trump is against virtually everything Rogan pretended to stand for a very long time. And when I was reading this article, I was reminded, do you remember when Candace Owens went on Joe Rogan's podcast and they viciously debated climate change, where Candace was saying it's fake, it's not real, it's a hoax. And Rogan was like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You have no idea what you're talking about. And he was repping the climate change is real position. Remember that? Here, let's watch some of it.
The real problem is with climate change is that, for sure, there has been ups and downs throughout the history of this planet. They're observable. They follow them in. I mean, it was one of the subjects that I had earlier today with Dr. Robert Schoch. In 2014, the vast majority, 87% of scientists, said that human activity is driving global warming, yet only half the American public ascribe to that view. So,
well, what website is
87%, and this is
Scientific American.
Yeah.
Yeah, .com though. Like that means it's making money. I don't trust that. If it was a .org, I would probably take that. But this is just a random website, and
well,
I don't
Scientific
trust
American is not necessarily a random website.
Scientific American is a .com. They're making money, so I don't trust them. Scientific American. And then she goes, well, maybe if it was a .org, I would believe it. By the way, they go on to pull up a .org, and she keeps denying it. Oh, my God. See, this is old school Joe Rogan, when he still had his finger on the pulse to one extent or another, when he still had one foot, at least, in reality, tearing apart Candace Owens for being dead wrong on climate change.
I don't believe this like at all, just so you know.
You don't believe it like at all?
I
mocking her to her face for not believing in climate change.
I genuinely don't believe it. I know you do, but I genuinely don't believe it.
I believe most of the time the consensus of scientists that are studying the data.
Right.
And so what they're doing is
But do you remember all of the stories that came out about the scientists that said that when they tried to present their evidence to show, like, they were basically just getting shut down at every corner? You can pull that up too. Like, scientists who look up the opposite, right? Instead of looking for what you're searching for, looking for what you're not looking for.
I didn't search for it. That's what I found when I searched it.
Sorry.
Instead of looking for what you're looking for, why don't you look for the opposite? And he's like, I wasn't looking for this. I just typed in, like, information on climate change or whatever.
Yeah,
but yeah, look up.
But this is my question. Yeah. Why are you so sure? This is an extremely complicated subject.
And it is. I said I am not so sure that I would die on the hill for it. Mm-hmm. My opinion right now, and is just that it was a means, because forget the fact of whether you believe global warming is real. Let's say it's 100% real. Let's say we know for fact it's real. Is there a way?
Well, let's be clear.
Yeah.
Global warming, climate change is definitely real. It's happening.
Well,
the question is, why has it happened? Yes, it has always happened.
So what is the climate change? Yes, the climate changes. It was different weather yesterday than it was today. The climate is forever changing. Like that's the problem, is that people are making it seem like that's something weird.
No,
that's
unique.
Not.
You're misrepresenting the issue. The issue is people think that human beings are exacerbating climate change to the point where there's a tipping point. We cross over that tipping point. We're going to deal with huge problems that could be corrected if we act now and put a lot of funding into climate control.
Old school Joe Rogan. Old school Joe Rogan. So this guy who argued directly to Candace Owens' face, effectively, that she's a fucking idiot, and she's a liar, and she doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about climate change because she doesn't believe in it. This guy ended up endorsing this guy. The guy who is planning to withdraw from the U.S. Paris Climate Agreement again, by the way. And that's why this is unforgivable, in my opinion, right? This is why it's unforgivable, because Joe Rogan knows better. He's smart enough. He knows better. You think he doesn't know, or he didn't know, that, hey, Trump in his first term pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement, also pulled out of the Iran Agreement, which was working? You think he doesn't know these things? You think he doesn't know that the Paris Climate Agreement and the Iran Agreement were good? You think he doesn't know that? And he endorsed the guy, and then he pulls out of it. And Joe should have known this is what this guy's going to do. He should have known that, because it's what he did already. And also, Joe should have known he's a fucking liar and lied to his face relentlessly for 3 hours straight, pretending the election was rigged. It wasn't. Now Joe knows it wasn't. Trump just won. Which, by the way, if Kamala won, would Joe have said it was rigged? Is he that far gone now? That's what he thinks? Lied about saying, I never said lock her up about Hillary. Of course he did. We played the compilation on the show the other day. So, here's your... Come get your independent media, dog. We're never fixing the country if this is our independent media, somehow even worse than mainstream media. One more thing that I wanted to point out for you guys. There was a video of Rogan talking about immigration. I believe it was with Duncan Trussell, his comedian friend Duncan Trussell. And I think Duncan's kind of like a hippie lefty. And they started ripping Trump's immigration policy from his first term in office, basically calling it disgusting and grotesque. And Rogan has now endorsed Trump. And would you look at this? Report: Stephen Miller will serve as White House Deputy Chief of Staff for policy under Trump. Miller has discussed a turbocharged program of denaturalization That is removing the citizenship of citizens who immigrated to the U.S. to engage in mass deportations. So in other words, not only are they talking about mass deporting undocumented immigrants, they are also talking about denaturalizing people who are legal immigrants and deporting them. Any thought on that, Joe? Got anything to say about that? Any disagreements? You want to call it disgusting and grotesque like you did in the first term when he was doing family separation, where you accurately and correctly called out that it's fucked up? What do you think about naturalized citizens who are legal immigrants being denaturalized and deported? What do you think about a mass deportation program, even if it does only, let's say for argument's sake, which it won't, but let's say for argument's sake, it'll only be the undocumented immigrants that they mass deport? What do you think about the fact that the overwhelming majority of them are not criminals? What do you think about the fact that the overwhelming majority of them are just trying to make a better life for them and their families, and they're working hard? They pay more into the government, pay more in taxes than they receive in benefits. What do you make of that? Should those people be deported? Are they a problem? My guess is he won't address any of this at all in any way, shape, or form, because it's kind of uncomfortable now that he endorsed this guy, and now that basically his entire friend group are little Trump sycophants who don't know their fucking ass from their elbow when it comes to policy, and so he'll probably just shut the fuck up and not bring it up. There's your bold new media truth teller. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.